Yep. Yep, 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 yep. This is gonna be a short stream. I have already done a bunch of work on something else today, and we have a meeting in like 2 hours or less, so we'll try to get something done. Also, my brain is fucking cooked. But what we're doing today is this, right? What is this? Yes. This is the save system. So this is what a tile contains. The tile should no longer contain visible, I think. That's some bullshit that just shouldn't be saved. Doesn't contain room number, building number, room ID. Selected. This isn't a thing either. The slice through, it might need. Ultimately, I don't think it should contain that. That should be a part of the tile index, which should just be an actual, just one integer. That's what the tile index should be. Maybe one integer plus... it could probably be like 16 bytes. Maybe. How much is... No, 16 bytes is not enough. Or maybe it is. 16 bytes is what? 6 by 525. Five. My bad. I think, yeah, that should be enough. But it could be like this much. Imagine. Or just this. That's also fine. Because then the rest of the integer should be... the sheet. If there even is a sheet. It might not work like that either. But the tile needs to have a detail index here as well. Which is a vec4. Just like the tile index. Why this is a float, I don't really know. I feel like this should be integers. It needs to be like that, I think. Tile matrix has a map size and tiles. The slice through, I think... I don't know. Yeah. Like I said, that should be part of the tile later on. But for now, this is gonna have to be that way. Then, let's look at everything else. This is the tile matrix. Then we have a bunch of other things here. We have a tile... What is this? Is this used? I don't think so, because we moved it down here. Like, it's in here. Tile data vector. Object data. At the end of the day, is this all there is? The tile data vector. Yeah, the tile data vector is the only one we need. Why do I have so many? It's only the tile data vector. Tile type. Room numbers. Building data. No longer contains this. Floor data, vert count. Room data. This is stupid. This should then be x int 32. Y int 32. Z int 32. W int 32. Object data. X, Y, Z. Object index XYZ. Tile data vector. This is the entire thing. Buildings, rooms, floors, roofs. So let's see, what is the rule here? I think you can't have nested things, maybe. See here we have rooms and room data, but I don't know if you can have a structure like that inside of room data. Like we have bird count in the room data. And that's pretty much it. So, for example, here, this is the room vertices, but this should actually just be quads here. So the room data should contain quads, vec, or int. Right? Is that how you do it? Yeah. And that should be perfectly fine. Let's Google flat buffers. Flat buffers schema. Don't change default values. Struct. Oh, right. Yeah, okay. So this should be a struct. Array syntax. Arrays are currently only supported in a struct. What about lists? Vectors. Nesting vectors is not supported. You can wrap the inner vector in a table. Because yeah, that's the thing, right? What does that mean? Nesting vectors is not supported. So it is supported. Right. You need a table of quads. Table quads, which is like that. And then in the room, we then say quads is like this. Or wait. No. Quads is just a vec4. And this is the room data, that's a table. And then there will be a vector of room data. And that's it. That's easy. Oh. Floor data should only contain room IDs. Rooms int 32 I guess I'm not really sure. Oh, quads are vector 6. Oh. Does it need this? Not sure. Bird count. Maybe. The reason I have it here makes me think that, yeah, maybe we need that. But here we don't have like a tile count. So I'm not so convinced. The building it belongs to, the floor it belongs to. What else? Its ID. Well, it is a U-byte, right? We want to set this? Assigned byte. Weird. Tables. The field list can be appended to and deprecated from, while still maintaining compatibility. Okay. I don't remember why I've set it a default value here, if there's a reason for that. I don't think so. Either way, these values need to have a value to be saved, so I don't see why it needs to have a default value. Oh yeah, hold on. There. Need to charge my wireless stuff before the meeting. Don't like sitting in my chair when we have a meeting. It's annoying. Floor data. Floor number. We have a floor number here. What about the building? Got a roof ID. It's got a sorted list of floors. It's got a hash set of rooms. Yeah, sure. Suppose. Now, I do think here, though. I think only here. I don't know, tile data vector. I think that's a really bad name for this. I think this should be called world data vector. And then here we need an ID, which is an int. 32, 16, it doesn't matter. Because there's gonna be like 3 of that one, so it doesn't matter. Why is this an XYZ like that, when we can just make it be an actual vector 3? We just say map size vec3 int. And we have tiles, tile data, that one is fine. Object data, that's fine. File room numbers. This one. This one I don't understand. We don't need to store the bounds. All we need to store is the quads, and then we can recreate the bounds on load. But yeah, I'm really out of it because I already did a bunch of work. So my brain's already dried or drained. Also, I slept really poorly. But the meeting is soon. It's an hour away or so. We'll just try to get something done. But I'm a little bit unsure exactly what we need here, but... Like, how should the building work? The building has an ID here. Is that what does it need that? Floor number. I'm a bit hesitant calling this a floor ID because I feel like that's a bit misleading. Because it's not an ID. It could be an ID. But the way it would have to work then is it would have to be like a dictionary hash set or something. But I just don't know if it's necessary. Because the idea is that everything revolves around the rooms. And then what happens is that if you walk into a room, that room then contains a building ID and a floor number. So then, if the character that walks in grants vision, and that means that we need to make the building visible, then we access the building ID using the ID and the master list of buildings in the main controller. And then we iterate through the room ID hash set that exists within the building. And then we check each room for its floor number. If the floor number is greater than the floor number of the original room, then we'll hide them, most likely, make them transparent. And if it's the same, then we'll make them visible. Or hide the front wall or whatever. There needs to be 3 states, I believe, for a room. There needs to be not visible, visible, and semi-visible. Semi-visible is when it's on the same floor, but there are no entities inside. And the difference is that if it is semi-visible, then we only remove the roof. I mean, in reality, there probably won't be a roof unless it's just... It's only got 1 floor. And visible means that we remove the... or we make the front wall transparent of the room. World container doesn't need to be stored, not transparent. So for a room, the room's ID doesn't like actually really need to be stored, but it's one of these things where it's like, it makes it hard to make the room do anything. But maybe we shouldn't be doing that, because the ID isn't necessarily something that needs to be stored here. Because it could just be the ID is the index, but that might not be true because we might have like a gap. So I think the ID should be stored. And it doesn't need to be a byte. Like, an int32 might be overkill, but it also doesn't matter. Because we're gonna have, like, just a couple of rooms on a map, most likely. It's just irrelevant. Same thing with this building ID, door number, just make it in 32s. Let's see, we have room ID, building ID, floor number, quads. To save. Unsave. Yeah. And the roof, I think, is identical to this. It's gonna have an ID, int 32. Gonna have a floor number. Gonna have a building ID. Int 32. And a list of quads. I think a vector is a list. But then a building floor data. Yeah, let's just not have a floor. And a building needs building ID. It needs not a whole lot. I think it only needs to really have its ID. Actually, I don't know if you need to save buildings. And the reason for that is because everything is made up out of floors or out of rooms, and the roof is a floor or a room. Basically, it's above, right? So it needs different logic. It needs to be set when you're like not inside of the room, or inside of the floor, or inside of the roof, but when you're inside of the roof or the room below it, or when you're inside of the floor that it belongs to, rather, I would say. That's when it becomes like proper invisible, as opposed to just being, well, actually it's like always invisible. So because we have building IDs in the room data and in the roof data, that means that we can just generate the building from the roof and room data. On load. Save and load nothing. Generate on load. From room and roof. IDs. I think that makes sense. Room numbers is useless. Tile data here is... I think this should be just 2 integers. Tile data. Tile data. Tile packed. Let's call it tile packed. And say it's an int 32. And then detail packed int 32. I actually don't know if that matters. It might not really. At most, we might save like a byte or something. Because what is this? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 8 bytes. This is also 8 bytes. So it doesn't really matter. Like, packing it is actually probably just detrimental here. I'll be right back. So what does the tile look like right now? I'll type twice. I'll type bitwise. Yeah, that's correct. This vertices, these need to go. Object data, XYZ. Float, float, float. Let's make this be a position vec3 int. Instead, object index XYZ. I don't know what that is. I genuinely don't know what that is supposed to be. Where's the save load? Just looking at here. Object index. I think loading is actually like in world controller. Open level. Create object. Position. Yeah. And right now the objects are just it's just an index. But that's what's a little confusing here, because it's like, yeah, we've got a position. This is being set to multiplied by tile size. No, it should be set to pixel. Create object. Create object should always be done on pixel. Make sure this is the case. Because I think this is kind of wrong. But yeah, this tells me that like here we did have an object database. Oh, I think I know how it was. Yeah. it was basically set up so that the database was three-dimensional, and so I was using each dimension as a way to sort. But I think that should not be object data. It should just be an index in 32. Because the database is a bit shitty, but I think at the end of the day, databases are always shitty. No matter what. Because each object needs to exist somehow. Like here I have my data, object data database. And then here we have my object database. And the object database fetches the data from all the other databases. The animation database, behavior database, combat module database, data module database. And then each object exists like this. They exist in this database here. Which takes an enum here, which I think this is like almost stupid, but I don't know. But basically we have a static dictionary here that just contain a pointer towards this function here, or towards this, the accessor, and the accessor contains a function to access the core data. Or rather, it contains static data and the core data. So the static data this is the static data. Yeah, the database is the static data. So this is all... This is what I'm not sure if this is stupid. But because this is static, I guess this is all in memory at all times. Which should be fine. Because it's not a whole lot of stuff, you know, it's just a bunch of integers and... But this might be dumb. I'm not sure. I completely lost what I was even doing. Today is a bad day. Object data. Needs a position and an index. At the moment, that should be all it needs. Until later, when we implement a way to store changes. But that needs to be separate from this. Because the changes are really only relevant for combat. So it's gonna need to be an entire separate table here that contains like character settings. Or like talents or equipment and shit like that. That'll just point towards indices. And then there needs to be... actually, this needs to have an ID. That's actually super relevant, I think. Because I think the objects might need to have the same ID. They might not. I'm not sure. But we can give them ID. Because it's about, like... storing... like combat objects, for example. We're gonna need to store... like teams for combat. Enemy team, player team, ally team. And then in there, I think the ideal way to handle it is to just... we store all the objects in the world as just... with their IDs. Then we just restore them to the same ID slot. And then... the teams just store IDs. Right. Which is it's like a hash set, right? Something like that. We don't need buildings here. We don't need floors. We only need rooms and roofs. We don't need all these verts. I think. This should just be... yeah, this should be fine. I actually don't know if the struct can have variables with uppercase. Let's check. Using flat buffers. Can a struct contain a variable with a name that contains an upper case character? Because I'm 99% sure in the table they have to be lowercase. No. Yeah. So this then needs to be min. Now, should the structs come first? I don't know if that matters. Namespace, LOT. This should be... See, the issue is that I feel like a lot of this is hard to tell what it is. Because it's like we have roof data, object data. I kind of wonder if we should put like an FB in front of everything to declare that it's a flat buffer. And this namespace should be namespace dot flat buffers, I think. Because I did have issues before with it like encroaching a bit on what I was trying to name things. It's annoying. Because this is only used for the save system, so I think it's good to have it be like very distinctly separate. But now we need to change the name everywhere here. Okay. I think that's good. Probably. This index, we call that a database index. So we can differentiate that between the ID and the index. That's a little... And just make this an int32. It's just going to be easier to load. We don't need to do a bunch of conversions left and right. For the tile data, it's very relevant that they're bytes. I don't know if they should have this. I feel like this should be set by us. I don't know why it's defaulted. I don't think it should be defaulted. Okay. So then... that we have that. We then... this is tile data vector. I'm gonna remove the others. Save version. Is relevant? Yes, it is. For later, but not right now. Let's just put this in here. Right? Something like that. And the reason you want a save version is so that you can identify what it looks like, and then if you need to update it, you can then convert it from this to another save version. Because it's a little tricky to... basically the way you do that is you use the all the way to load the data from the old save file, and then you resave it to a new version. It's this is a compression system, really. That should be all you need to do. So here we have a file I've made called generator. I don't know why I have all of these files, like the tile and the tile vector. Let's call it world data. Why is it called a vector? Let's just call it a world data. World save data. FB world save data. Now, it might be a bit different. I might want to have two different saves, because this is how to save a level. So we might want to... there are two ways to handle this. Either we just save the level, and then instead of loading it through the level file, well, I mean, you'll always load it through the level file, but the level files will be indexed, and so then we have a separate save system that just is like the save game, and then it'll just say, yeah, we're on level 3, and then we load that, and then it also contains like some states changes from default. And that would be that. Or it could be that the level is like the tiles and all of the static objects that aren't relevant. They just exist in the world, right? You can't do anything with them. It's just like torches and shit. And then you load those, and then there's a separate save that contains all of the dynamic objects. And then you have a default save for the dynamic objects. And then when you save the game, you save the state of all the dynamic objects too. I think that's a good way to do it. I'm so tired. So this needs to be, one of these needs to be that. The others should just be deleted. That. Unknown root type FB tile data vector. Oh yeah, I changed the name of it. Didn't I? FB world data. There, that's the root. What about the save version? Does that need to be... I mean, actually, I think it should be like this. I don't know. So you have the root type. Does that matter? Maybe not. Because I'm not sure if the save version needs to be stored in here. It might, actually. But the issue then is like... Oh, whatever. Let us try again. Error. Type referenced but not defined. Vec3. 75, 71. ID Vec3 int. Oh, it's FP. FP. Oh, it worked. And then you end up with a folder that looks like this. My generated folder here. LOT, flat buffers. And then it contains all of these. It contains all the structs and tables and whatnot. And then you pop these into the C# project. Oh. The time has come. Right? Today's Monday. Yeah, today's Monday. And then we have Google flat buffers, but we also need where are they stored? At OT. It's this one. A little scary to delete all of these. I don't like them being in this folder. LOT. I want them to be in a folder called flat buffers, I think. Does that make more sense? I think so. The LOT folder delete. And here we're gonna say using lot.flatbuffers. Now this is completely fucked. So LOT flat buffers tile data. This should now be FB Tile data. Yeah, now that's a lot safer. FB tile data dot create FB tile data. Okay. We don't have these. Is this the correct order? Tile type, tile sheet, Y2, X2. Yeah. FB, okay. FB tile data vector. What are we looking for here then? Tiles. Create tiles vector. FB tile data vector. This is morning kips. World data vector dot create tiles vector. FB object data create FB object data. No? Oh no. What do I do then? Huh? Object data dot create object data. God damn. Oh, it's like this. It's FB world data vector dot create object. Create FB object data. No? Create objects vector. No? What? The FB tile data has a create FB tile data. It's a table. So FB object data FB object data. Why does that not have a create? Huh? What is the difference? Like it says start, add, create. FP object data only has start, add, but no create. That's so weird. I don't get it. Oh, maybe that's why I did it like I did before. It's a little confusing here. Hmm. It needs to be slightly different. Offset. That should be the same. Start of object data. Objects.count. So FB object data dot start of object data builder FB object data dot add ID yeah, ID. It needs the builder here too. Builder. Add position. FB vec3 int dot create FB vec3 int and this is then position test dot position dot x. And it then needs to be repeated. X, Y, Z. Okay. And then add db index. How can I fetch the index of it? Maybe it's not actually stored. Let's see. Object database. For example, that's the database key is RIA. So in the object data module, I feel like it probably needs to be stored in here, maybe. Because otherwise, I don't think it is stored anywhere. Like during creation, we just get the core data. That doesn't really help us. Object mode. Yeah. Now the core data does contain a key. And so if we look at player characters, the core data key returns RIA. So it does contain it, which is very thankful. Then all we need to do is just store public. What was it called? Database keys / objects. Database key equals core data dot key. that. This isn't necessarily that easy either. Spells, effects. Actually, it's a little shitty. Because this, if we do this, then this is of type objects. So this should be like a uint database key, and then it might need a like object type or something. But I don't know, how do we get that? I think we'll figure that out next time. I'm just gonna write this down. Make database key question mark or and type question mark accessible from object. Right, and that's because the object, in order to save itself, it needs to store it as an ID. But then, like the database keys here, separated between objects, spells, effects, and effect objects, combat backgrounds, but the effect objects are actually just objects, I think. And then in which case, then that becomes weird, right? So something there. But yeah, like I said, it was going to be a short stream. Until next time, thanks for hanging. Have a good day. Bye-bye.